Happy Monday, everybody. Okay, so this week I'm going to look at our GDP numbers. Okay, so the first quarter came in, first quarter of 2024, and it was up, but it wasn't good news for the economy. It was up lower than hoped for. The actual number that came in was that our gross domestic product was up 1.3%. Now, a country wants strong GDP numbers. When you've got high growth, that means your economy is really booming. So this was disappointing news in the economy, right? Now, why do we care about GDP? Well, one of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is we use that as a factor in the ratio of debt. How does your country service your debt? So when we look at our national debt, we think of what's the ratio between debt to GDP in terms of servicing that debt, right? And so as our debt grows, you want your GDP to grow. And if it's not growing at the same rate, that's where trouble starts to come in. So let's go back to 1982. Ronald Reagan was president, and the United States debt just broke the $1 trillion mark. And that was big news at the time. $1 trillion was a mind boggling number, right? We had just broken the $1 trillion mark. Well, now that number has grown quite a bit. We're now approaching $35 trillion. We're over the 34 trillion mark, approaching 35 trillion, pretty fast. Now, how long has it taken, or I'm sorry, what rate has it grown to go from 1 trillion to 35 trillion? Well, I'm going to get into some nuts and bolts here because we actually get some responses from our viewers, which we love, and they dig deeper on some of the stats we give them. So I'm going to go down into some nitty gritty here. And by the way, keep sending us feedback. We love it. But to go from 1 trillion to 35 trillion in this many years, that growth has been over 8% annually a year. All right, so then no problem as long as your GDP has been growing 8%, right? Then it's an apples to apples comparison. We'd be in the same situation that we were in 1982. That hasn't happened though. Our gross domestic product has only grown just over 3% in that same amount of time. So that's where the problem is. Our debt has been growing at this rate while our GDP has been growing at this rate. And that's just unsustainable, right? So now let's go back to GDP numbers of today, right? I just reported at the beginning that our gross domestic product came in at 1.3, right? That's not strong numbers. And that goes back to what Greg and I have been talking about for a while, is that we as a country need to be aware of stagflation. We haven't seen a stagflationary environment since the 70s. And what is stagflation? That's where you've got high inflation and a recession at the same time, right? They're not supposed to coincide, but every once in a while they do. And this is a possible situation, right? So your gross domestic product is starting to go down, that's the hint of a recession starting. Meanwhile, inflation is still high. Now, that's not good for the economy. But if you remember in the 70s, there were things that went up in value a lot. You remember the long gas lines, right? Because oil was so expensive. Well, guess what? We're investing in oil right now. So while it might hurt at the gas pump, your investments are going to be doing well. What else went up in value? Well, gold and silver did really well because there was a concern of the currency, U.S. currency, and as you know, we have concern with the U.S. currency as well. So what I'm doing here is just really kind of pulling back the curtains to show you the makeup of the economy. And it's not to scare you. It's actually to give you confidence that, yeah, there are troubling signs coming down the pike. However, we're prepared for them. So with that, I'm going to leave you be. You have a great week. Oh, and if you like this video, please click at the bottom of Greg and my videos. Give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. You have a great week. See you next time.